Hello everyone, it's Storydive, back again, this time reviewing and breaking down the references and Easter eggs in the Star series American Gods, Season 3, Episode 1. I was wondering if they were going to release the complete season this time, but it appears they're still going week by week. So I will review the episodes each week as they come out, starting with this one. I have to say this episode was a bit of a slow start for me, but it's only the first episode of the season, and the wheels are in motion for some interesting things to happen later on. There were some very cool moments, which I'll get to, and some interesting references to mythology and other Easter eggs, or Ostara eggs. So without further ado, let's get started.
Hail the All-Father.
As the episode starts out, we witness what seems to be a very cultured ballet, only to realize that the ballet dancers are in fact zombie cannibals, perhaps a twisted reference to the Valkyrie, and this is a death metal show. The band is called Blood Death, and the lead singer is Johan, played by Marilyn Manson. Based on an article I read, he's a Viking berserker, but we'll have to see if that turns out to be true in the upcoming episodes. As we find out very soon, this is a very Viking and Norse-centered metal band. Johan invites the Allfather, aka Odin, aka Wednesday, up on the stage, and as we can see, Wednesday really soaks up all this worship, charging up his god battery, I guess you could say. Soon after, we check in on Laura Moon. She has returned to New Orleans and is seeking the advice of Mem and Bridget, who is a voodoo or Vodou Loa, along with Baron Semdi, her husband. Bridget herself is a syncretistic figure, meaning she's adapted from another religion, Saint Bridget of Kildare and Bridget of the Tuatha Dé Danann, but I digress. Bridget says Baron Semdi is away in Hialeah, Florida for a Loa family reunion. Incidentally, Hialeah is the site of a well-known church of the Santeria religion, which itself is a syncretistic religion that adapts aspects of Christianity as well as the Yoruba religion and the Orishas, which is interesting because we are going to see the Orishas later, and here she's subtly hinting at the sort of familial relationship between Orishas and Loa. They are quite similar and have a similar origin. Laura explains that she still doesn't know how to use Samdi's potion, which Bridget explains is a grigri, a kind of spell or talisman in the voodoo religion. Bridget has been storing Mad Sweeney here in this alleyway, doesn't seem very safe, so Laura puts Sweeney in this tomb, writes, "Get spear, kill Odin" on his forehead, and gives him back the coin, I'm assuming to resurrect him, but of course without the coin, she dies instantly, and the coin even falls out of Sweeney's hand. Meanwhile, Shadow has been working in Milwaukee under the alias Mike Ansel, and of course, every girl he meets is hitting on him. But Wednesday decides to intervene, first speaking through this lady.
Even though he is now with the angels, I can hear him say.
And basically making it clear to Shadow that he needs to go to Lakeside, where Wednesday told him to go in the first place. Shadow is of course hesitant to do this, but after what are probably the FBI come knocking at his door, he has no other choice other than to leave Milwaukee. He finally gets a chance to ask Wednesday, who he now knows is his father, some questions about his upbringing. It's difficult to know if anything Wednesday says is the truth, but there was one interesting detail he added, which was that he can't leave America, because he's an American god, and his worshippers are there.
I'm bound to these shores. If I were ever to leave, I would cease to exist.
This is actually a concept they touch on in the book, which is that different countries have different versions of the same god. So Scandinavian countries have their version of Odin, as does the US, etc. Wednesday also says he needs Shadow, although he doesn't really specify why. Then we get our first look at Mr. World in his Miss World form, played by Dominique Jackson. She is surrounded by assistants, which are basically what are called spooks in the book, meaning these are the blank beings that Mr. World or Miss World transforms into something. And all of them appear to be millennials who are in touch with social media, so this is probably Mr. World's social media form. They are helping her with a project called Shard, which she says is like a church of the mind. Each of her assistants is a specialist in a different aspect of social media or the internet. For example, this guy is called Viral, she is called Trending, she is called Meme, and this guy is called Dr. Fap. Technical Boy shows up, who Miss World is not happy with, and just to correct any possible dissent in her ranks, she kills one of the social media experts, Viral, like Robert De Niro in The Untouchables. Basically, Miss World is not happy with the worship Wednesday was able to garner at that metal show, and she's trying to curb the social media perception of the old gods against them. Technical Boy reveals what Shard really is. It's basically the Matrix.
A digital pipeline direct into every cerebral cortex on the planet is a no-brainer.
Wednesday explains that their Winnebago, which itself is named after a Native American people of Lake Winnebago, is another incarnation of his 1966 Cadillac Betty, which itself is an incarnation of Odin's eight-legged steed, Sleipnir. Mistworld sets up this roadblock for them, but using some rune magic, Wednesday is able to transport the Winnebago into the backstage, the area that exists in people's subconscious. From there, they're able to walk to another motorhome, which seem to act like portals, and walk into a forest in which they will find the Native American culture hero, Whiskey Jack, also known as Wasake Jack. Wasake Jack is a trickster figure of the Algonquin, Cree, and Dene nations, among others. In the book, they find him in South Dakota in Lakota lands because he's sort of posing as the spider trickster spirit Iktomi. In the series, it appears Iktomi is a separate character because he was played by Julian Richings in the last season, but in this season, we finally meet Whiskey Jack, who is played by Canadian icon Graham Greene. Years ago, I did a video about the potential characters they can bring into the series, and what you're seeing here is a note that I wrote when the channel was still called FanNation, asking for the show creators to cast Graham Greene in the role of Whiskey Jack, and apparently the showrunners make all their decisions based on my videos, because that's what they did. Okay, probably not. Graham Greene is a great actor. It's a no-brainer to cast him for this role, and actually he played Wasake Jack in the past. Sort of. In the 1991 film Clear Cut, it's hinted that Graham Greene's character is the trickster figure Wasake Jack. So this is the second time Graham has played him. Whiskey Jack tells Shadow that the twilight of the gods, Ragnarok in Norse mythology, is at hand, and Shadow has a destiny to fulfill, although he doesn't quite know what that is. And he says there are those that can guide Shadow. In the smoke of his campfire, Shadow sees these figures, which I'm very sure are the Orishas.
When your head and your heart are brought into alignment, the answers will come.
To find them, he says to follow the Enamaki, which is another name for the Thunderbird of Native American mythology. Thunderbirds are a guide for Shadow in the book as well. Wednesday then interrupts them and refers to an old conflict that they had. He might actually be referring to the Norse settlement of North America, which happened around the year 1000. The Norse did travel to North America, like in the first episode of Season 1 of American Gods. They encountered natives there who they called Skraelings, and promptly started to fight with them. So that might be the old conflict that Wednesday is referring to. When Wednesday demands that Whiskey Jack join his war and he refuses, he suddenly has what looks like snakeskin. I'm not sure why he appears to be a snake because I couldn't find any direct connection between Wasake Jack and snakes. Although snakes are featured in a number of Native American myths, he is a shapeshifter, so perhaps he just chooses that form. If you know what is up with his scaly face, let me know in the comments. Meanwhile, while all of this is going on, Bilquis is in a new house, decked out in all of the images of worship dedicated to her from over the ages. So evidently she's doing very well financially, and this is because of the app called Sheba, because she's the Queen of Sheba, that Technical Boy made for her. Of course, Technical Boy comes to collect, trying to get Bilquis to join the New Gods coalition against the Old Gods, but she refuses. She intends to stay neutral, and as a way of convincing Technical Boy of her position, she gives him this vision of war, which really messes him up. After they go through another motorhome portal, Shadow and Wednesday end up in North Dakota, on the land of the Spirit Lake Nation, and this is where we meet Wednesday's new assistant, Cordelia, although he says she's his fiancée.
This radiant being is my fiancée, Cordelia.
Just joking, I hope. Cordelia seems to be human, but at this point, who really knows? She's not a character in the book, so I don't know. She arrives in a Volkswagen bus, which is one of the vehicles they use in the book, and according to Wednesday, it's another incarnation of Betty. Wednesday takes a quick jab at Christmas, saying it's a made-up holiday.
Spent Christmas in a truck stop on account of you.
That's a made-up holiday anyway.
Likely this is reference to Christmas replacing the old Germanic festival called Yule, which would have sent some worship his way, although I should be clear that Odin is not Santa Claus. And he says they're off to Utah to enlist another Native American deity, Teklohai.
Teklohai, the one the Navajo call the night carrier.
This is a real deity of the Navajo, although sometimes his name is spelt more like Teklahanoai, and his main role in mythology is that he carries the moon on his back. Thus he is called the Night Carrier, while his son, Tisohanoai, carries the sun on his back. So it seems Wednesday and Cordelia are off to Navajo territory in Utah, and I'm actually not sure if we will see Teklohai in the series, but I guess we'll find out next episode. Shadow tries to go his own way, but as he soon finds out, Wednesday has likely been tampering with the weather. Every single bus is cancelled due to weather, except for, you guessed it, the bus to Lakeside, Wisconsin. After all that, Shadow ends up doing what Wednesday wants anyway, and makes his way over this very cool animated map, over which Wednesday's ravens, Hugin and Moonin, fly because of course they're following him and monitoring him. He drives by a drunken Santa Claus and even Big Ollie, the Viking statue in Alexandria, Minnesota, before eventually making it to Lakeside. Upon arriving at Lakeside, Shadow meets Sophie and Allison McGovern. These are both characters in the book and they come into play later, so take note. Then he goes inside this store and meets Hinzelman, who is also a character in the book. In the book it's a he, but here Hinzelman says her name is Anne-Marie Hinzelman, kind of like Anne Murray, the singer, and she seems very nice. That's all I'm gonna say. She calls Chad Mulligan the local police chief. He's your typical small-town police chief in an 80s movie, and he gives Shadow a ride to the apartment that Wednesday has rented for him. But of course, lucky for Shadow, the key breaks off in the door, and while he's trying to break in the window, someone sneaks up behind him and puts a rifle to the back of his head. I'm guessing this will end up being his neighbor, Marguerite Olson, who Chad Mulligan mentioned earlier as the local journalist for the paper. I don't think I'm giving too much away by saying she ends up being Shadow's love interest. Also in the background, I can't play it, but Gimme Shelter by the Rolling Stones plays. One of the lyrics is, "War is just a shot away," which of course is hinting to the oncoming War of the Gods. Those are all the references and Easter eggs I noticed in the first episode of Season 3, but I would love to know what you think. Did you notice anything that I didn't notice, or did I get something wrong? This episode seemed to be gestating a lot of things, but I think the action will pick up a bit in the next episode, and I'm very sure we will start to see the Orishas then. Anyway, I would love to know your thoughts on this episode. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to be notified of more videos like this. Check out my American Gods video playlist linked on the screen. And thanks for watching. Until next episode, premiering Sunday. Until next time.